Hello, everyone. What's going on? This is the Mega Multimedia Productions podcast here, talking about movies, games, TV shows, anime, all things kind of in the media realm. I'm back here with my buddy here, Neil Chase, and we are discussing the King's Man movie today. That's the main topic. And then we'll see where things go, as things always go. We have a little bit of things to discuss about it, I think. But yeah, I'm just gonna start off by talking about kind of jumping into things. I guess let's kind of go from how we go, and then we'll see how things flow.
Sounds good.
So first of all, basically to people listening here, I'm very first thing here. Neil has finally taken some advice and started doing video content as well, and finally has a TikTok going. But
Finally.
yeah, so why don't you start off by with your not choice of the week that inspired this episode?
Yeah, so I watched The Kingsman. I was actually excited to see this film because I really enjoyed the first two films, especially the very first one. I thought it was a fantastic movie. It kind of turned the whole spy genre on its head and gave us something that we haven't seen before in that type of movie. The second one was a good follow up. I thought it was a very solid effort. It had some missteps, I think, but overall, it was an entertaining, fun picture, and I enjoyed it a lot. So when they said, "Okay, we're making a third one," I was like, "All right, cool. Let's see where this goes." Um, I think one of the red flags immediately was the fact that it was not going to be a continuation of the series. So Taron Egerton wasn't going to be part of it. Gosh, none of the actors from the original film were going to be part of it. It was really just supposed to be a standalone story set in World War One about how the Kingsmen came to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, okay, you know what? At least that's a cool premise. I am actually interested in seeing the origin of the organization, especially since it was outlined briefly in the very first film. And I thought, okay, that sounds like a cool story.
Mm-hmm.
So I was eager to see it.
Yeah, me too. I do remember seeing the trailer and thinking like, okay, this is gonna be pretty decent. Maybe not like the best movie. Definitely same as any other thing. The third movie is almost always the worst of any trilogy or any sets of movies. Um, and like yeah, I agree with you 100%. The first Kingsman movie like blew everyone away. It was phenomenal. Second one was it was okay. They were trying to do similar things and trying to make it work, but it was good. But well, my first gripe with this one was definitely the fact that they it felt like they didn't know where they wanted the story to be because like what was it, a Kingsman origin movie, or was it a World War I like historical drama, like
Hmm.
why where were they focusing, what were they trying to do? That you could tell they had two whole complete different stories and they were trying to tell both in one movie.
Yeah, I found the same thing. To contrast that with the first two films, which have a very playful attitude, right? You almost get the sense that like it's very tongue in cheek. Like they almost approach the film with this attitude of like, look, guys, we know this isn't real. You know this isn't real. This is a comic book universe, really,
Mm-hmm.
come to life. So let's just have some fun with it. And to me, that always seemed the approach with the first two. This one, they at times go very serious, like way more than the predecessors did. But they then they go really super silly too, right? At the same time, so it was like, to me, it was almost like I don't know. Did Matthew Vaughn watch 1917? I think
That's
maybe, and he was like super impressed with it and thought this is a beautiful movie. I want to do something in World War One as well,
mm-hmm.
but then he didn't quite know how to fit it into the world of the Kingsmen,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have this really inconsistent tone to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like that's I was thinking the exact same thing. By the time I think their son's name was Conrad or something like that, he was like
Yeah.
it. it was just like, okay, so now by the time he finally got his wish to join the military and everything, oh, for those who are listening, by the way, this is gonna have spoilers for the Kingsman. Just wanted to throw that out there. Forgot to mention that. Sorry. But by the time he actually got into the into the war and everything, he's like, "Oh, my dad was right. Dad was right," and like exactly, it was turning into a yeah, 1917 was the exact movie I was thinking of, or what was that the movie that not do
Dunkirk.
Dunkirk. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like they it was so weirdly placed. Like I don't know what they were trying to do, but I did kind of get where they were trying to get a an origin together of like this is how it would happen, but it's like so in this fictional world, all these like world leaders are just on an evil doom patrol. Like it's everyone just connect like
Yeah. Yeah, that part I found so silly and over the top. It just pulled me completely out of the story. This idea that there's a Scottish goat herder somewhere who's really the mastermind behind everything that's really happened in the entire 20th century in terms of political figures and major wars. And it was just like, what, really? Like, this is where you guys are going with this?
it was just like I'm
And
this one bad guy and I have my henchmen of evil bad guys.
yeah, and he was just evil for the sake of being evil. Like literally, that was his motivation. Like, I just want to destroy everything. Wahaha. And it's like, okay, this is terrible.
Well, the one thing I did like, even though it has nothing, doesn't really have anything to do with the plot, but I did like how they had um they brought in, oh my god, I'm just blanking so hard on names right now. The character
Rescue.
From Black Panther and Falcon the Winter Soldier, the guy who played the villain Zemo, the guy who played Zemo in those.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't remember. I don't remember his name, but I like him now. Now that I've seen him a couple times in the MCU, I'm like picking him out. I'm liking him as an actor. Again, can't for the life of me remember his
Yeah, he's
name.
a great actor. Oh god, yeah, I'm blanking on his name as well. I'll be honest. Yeah, he's a German actor. I can't think of his name now.
Right.
But yes, he's a really great actor. I mean, this movie didn't lack for great actors. You've got like Ralph Fiennes in it first and foremost. So it's a movie that has great actors. Um, and Jim Hunsu, for example, he's in it as well, and he's really great. Gemma Adderton's in it. I think she does a really good job acting wise. Like I think everybody did a good job acting wise. I didn't feel like there was any issue on that level. I think these are all great actors. They're very professional with what they do, so they do the best that they can with the material that they're given. I
Exactly.
think the blame lies squarely on the shoulders of the people making the film, that being the writer and the director, um, because they cobbled together a story that's nonsensical at best, and very convoluted. The plot line, I just found it to be very convoluted. It didn't really know what it wanted to be. Um, it was this case of who's the actual lead in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the father, the Earl of Oxford, or is it the son, this character of Conrad? And it's like it could have been either one right up until a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like it becomes clear that it's one of the two. I don't know. I don't know how many spoilers you want me to get into
Oh,
here.
we can go into full things if you want.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
fine, fair
yeah.
enough.
Let's go
So
into full deep dive.
if we go into the full deep dive, so what happens is at the outset, the story begins basically during the Boer War in South Africa, where the Earl of Oxford, played by Ralph Fiennes. Um, I feel like I'm going to say Joseph Fiennes at some point. It's Ralph Fiennes, plays the Earl of Oxford, so he's this high level dignitary for the British government, and he brings his family to this Boer concentration camp that the English are running, and his wife is appalled, and he's appalled, and they want to do something about it. But then there's a Boer sniper who kills his wife, and this is not really a spoiler because it happens in the first 5 minutes of the film, and it sets him on the path of this really anti-war pacifist stance where he doesn't want to have his son ever involved in the war because that's what he promises his dying wife.
Mm-hmm.
fair enough. Okay, I think that's an okay setup for a film.
Hmm.
But then the movie really meanders after that for a very, very long time, because there's this like next time we see them, the kid's all grown up. He's an adult. He wants to go sign up for the army. Um, there's a war pending. Everybody can see it. World War I is like on the cusp. It's about to happen.
Hmm.
His father won't let him sign up. Everyone in their local village thinks the kid is a coward, and they even give him a white feather because of that fact. And like I say, you have this feeling like who's really the lead of the story, because they really show both of them as co-leads in this film
Hmm.
up to a certain point, and then until the war breaks out and the kid actually goes to war. And there's like these scenes of him in the war, and again, very reminiscent of 1917 in the sense of I think Vaughn was trying to capture that sort of horrible majesty of the war, trench war experience of
Hmm.
World War I.
Hmm.
I don't think he captured it as well as 1917 did. I mean, of course, you don't have Roger Deakins as your cinematographer, so you're, I think, already behind the eight ball, as it were. But it story wise, it just wasn't as impressive. I think the motivations of the character were kind of weak. Um,
Yeah.
and then the kid dies.
Yeah.
And then once he dies, Ralph Fiennes takes over and becomes this sort of kick-ass guy that, kind of out of nowhere, let's be honest. There's
Hmm.
no real indication that he's like this Superman type of guy for the entire movie. You just get the sense that he's just this rich guy who lives in a castle. And then
Hmm.
all of a sudden, he's like better
Super
fighter.
well trained and a
Yeah,
good fighter. He's like been has the limp, but he kind of actually has the limp, but he kind of doesn't, and he can use
yeah.
like yeah. Is he like pretending and then just randomly? Okay, we just have these spies throughout all of Europe already.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that whole spy thing was so weird, and it was on par with this idea of this Scotsman and his um, evil empire. And to contrast that, you've got this Earl of Oxford who's got a spy empire of house servants throughout the world, and it was just like, okay,
But
well, I guess why not?
I could see how maybe something like that could see. That's where I think where they were trying to do kind of like Agents of Shield. Like they're trying to do like Shield. Like they're trying to like build
Yes,
something. They were like, here's bits and pieces, and now with this spy organization of all these butlers and everyone that's connected somehow. Oh, now we're just gonna build this into a whole thing. It's like so that's the premise of the movie is that
yeah,
you're just building this
and
whole
all,
network.
yeah, and I'll be honest, I didn't mind the spy network so much. I thought it was at least that was grounded in a sort of realism. This idea that there are always servants, there are always people in these places of power who are just sort of background. Nobody pays them any attention. Especially like 100 years ago,
Hmm.
when it was very much the haves and the have-nots, and this idea that a servant is nothing more than really a piece of furniture, right? So I appreciated the fact that they used it to their advantage. This blatant bias against these working class people, and that it was the working class people then who are funneling information to the secret organization. I thought that was actually fairly clever as an
Hmm.
idea.
Hmm. And
Um,
something that's plausible you think could actually happen. Like people
yeah, yeah,
just standing there, just listening in to all these high end conversations and stuff.
right, right. Like it puts me in mind of so many films, you watch where people are having these like high level conversations in restaurants. That always makes me think of those scenes.
Hmm.
And there's a waiter literally standing right beside them as they're talking about plotting some bank heist or some overthrow of a government, or top military secrets. And I'm sitting there thinking, every time I watch a scene like this in a movie, I think to myself, do you not realize that there's a complete stranger standing right next to you who you're speaking freely in front of,
Hmm.
and you have no idea who this person is? It's like, to me, it's one of the biggest plot holes I think of any film of that ilk. Um, because it's just so dumb. It's just such a dumb plot hole, and it's like makes me think like, who would be that dumb as to just sit there in front of complete strangers? But then the moment they leave the restaurant, they're like, okay, now we can't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, like yeah. So sometimes you'll see like they'll be in the business room or whatever, and there'll be a servant at the door, and they'll sometimes they'll actually like shoo them away or whatever, which is what you would actually want. But now you just
that
have
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That would actually make sense to me.
Yeah. So
But
going back to talking about the son, like
yeah,
the one thing that was weird, definitely weird to me, was the fact that he was eager to go to war. Like after seeing his mom get murdered as like when he was a child, so he would have.
mhm,
We're assuming he's around 8 or 10, maybe. They don't actually
yes,
specifically say that, but
yes,
he's anyway, and he sees what's going on, and like throughout his whole entire upbringing, he would have been coddled by his father to stay away from it as much as possible, and granted this like he's obviously in the know-how, his father being integrating with politics and stuff like that, but and normally how people are, they go to like private school and they learn all this stuff and everything, but
right.
what was his motivation to be like, oh, wanting to hardcore chase after it? Like I know that back in that era when the UK was going into war, it probably was something like, hey, I need to serve my country. But like he seemed
Mhm.
like it's been his lifelong goal before any of this would have even known any of this was happening.
Yeah, they definitely got that message across that he was eager to join the military from the outset. But you're right. You're absolutely right. You think that something as traumatic as seeing your own mother gunned down in front of you in a warlike situation would be enough to dissuade you from wanting to have anything to do with war ever again. So I agree with that 100%. Um, but I think the film tries in a way to balance that viewpoint, or the balance or counter, I should say, that viewpoint with this idea of the extreme nationalism that would have been in place in England at the turn of last century. Because let's face it, it probably would have been a very nationalistic place where it's like the whole king and country and do your duty and everybody needs to join the army and stuff like this. Um, so I get that. And being a young man, he would have seen all his friends going off to join the army. And, you get that kind of Luke Skywalker. I think that was maybe what they were going for. The whole idea of like, well, all my friends are going to the academy, so why can't I?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just want to go get power converters at Toshi Station. Um, so, but again, he was a much weaker character than Luke Skywalker. Luke, you understand his motivations; they're very clear cut. With Conrad, it was, gosh, I hope it's Conrad.
I'm
I don't
pretty sure
even
that
know.
was his name. Yeah, at least that's how he
Yeah,
always referred to. Yeah.
yeah. With Conrad, it was, I don't know. It wasn't as clear cut. It was more muddled. It was just this guy who wants to join the military really just because,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the longer he doesn't, the more he feels the need to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the movie just took way too long to get him into the army.
Mm-hmm.
There's this entire I guess first half of the second act really where they're playing with this idea of the world is on the cusp of war. Will they, won't they go to war? Things happen to precipitate war and to bring them closer. And then other things happen, and then some more things happen, but they're never quite there yet. And there's all this double dealing. And then eventually, kind of the midpoint of the movies when they finally go to war.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, wow, that took so long for World War One to start in this film.
Mm-hmm.
That's all about World War One.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like, okay, like if you're going to take a historical event like this, and in this case, it was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. That was still the same, even though it's like a comic book movie, it's still the same event,
Hmm.
although through this weird evil
Yeah,
organization
exactly.
lens,
What's it called? Legion of
right?
Doom.
Yeah, it was like, oh my god, I could not get over the fact that this movie, I said this in my on Facebook, but I'll say it again because I think it bears repeating. The thing that I found the most outlandish about the villain in this film is that we're supposed to buy that there's this alternate history that's below the surface where this Scottish goat herder is responsible for Rasputin, for the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, for Mata Hari, um, for bad relations between the three kings involved in World War One, Lenin, and at the end you find out he's also responsible for Hitler.
Hmm.
And it was just like, it was too much. My brain felt like exploding at the end of it. It's like, okay, so you're telling me that there's one dude who literally lives on top of a mountain somewhere in the Scottish hills raising goats for cashmere scarves, and that's, by the way, an actual plot point in the movie.
Hmm.
That and he has a wooden elevator that you need a guy with a hand crank to get people up to the top. That this guy is really the power behind the power.
Hmm.
That he is the single most powerful guy in the world. Let's be honest.
Back when there's, the tel t- te- te- telecommunicating, what? Oh my, teleprompter, not teleprompter.
Telegraph.
Thank you. Telegraph communication, doves communication,
Yeah.
like letters. There's maybe some form of film projection and stuff, but like, how are you communicating all of this to get
Well, yeah,
everywhere? Like,
exactly. And then they seem to have a meeting like every week with all these bad guys in the same room. And yet this is at a time when traveling from one country to another would have taken like a week or two at
mhm.
most, or at least I should say. And mind you, this is during like wartime when travel would have been next to impossible between these countries. And yet you've got these guys from Russia and Germany and Austria and England and France or whatever, all convening in the same place. And then they just all go away. And then they come back again
Mhm.
a week later. And I'm just like, this is crazy. This is nuts.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to use the little pieces from other movies
Yeah.
because Game of Thrones. You know how in Game of Thrones there's the elevator that is like hand cranked or whatever. They're like, ooh, let's
Yep.
take that. And then I was thinking this. It was reminding me of the Sherlock. They were also trying to get like the Sherlock Holmes vibes because
Totally.
like
Totally.
from the first Sherlock Holmes, same thing. He's like trying to start the war. Oh, the war is gonna happen because Sherlock Holmes is set in the late 1800s, and
Yeah.
it's like implementing like, oh, this is about to happen, and they like
Yeah.
and they're talking about World War One, and then they're trying to do that same thing. I have the one guy in command, but Sherlock Holmes did it way better. Like,
Way better.
and
I agree.
same thing of
Yeah.
just like he just noticed, there's a red scarf. I want what is this specific type of material? He just touches it, and he just knows, and it's like there's as you
Right.
just said, there's no prior knowledge of him. Whoever can't even remember. I literally just watched the movie and I can't even remember his name. The main character, um, like he has this detective skills randomly.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Like it's like they just sort of give him random skills whenever he needs them, which was, it's sort of poor character planning, I guess you can call it. Just on a segue, one thing that got to me about the bad guy, the Scottish bad guy, every time you saw him, it's like you saw the back of his bald head, and I was just like, honest to God, I was expecting that the first time we see his face when he turns around, I was expecting him to be holding a white cat because it's like they were going like the full Doctor Evil route with this guy, and I was just it's such a parody of the trope of the evil mastermind, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Blofeld or the Doctor Evil. That I'm just like, did you really have to make him bald on top of everything else? Because it's like,
Yeah,
He's already a
exactly.
parody.
Oh, but which felt like if they were going through the route of the other Kingsman movies, it might have been a good laugh and it would have made sense. Like
Right. Yeah.
in the style, because like the first two movies have a completely different style than what this movie is, right? Like the director didn't know what they wanted to do. They were just okay, let's make this a war drama. So right, so
Yeah.
if they did something like that in the actual Kingsmen way, it would have been funny. It would have been like, wow, like as you said before,
Yeah.
like yeah, it's not just a basic James Bond spy movie. It's a comic book comedy spy movie. Like
Exactly. Exactly. And I thought they also wasted some characters. Like Jim On Hunsu's character, especially. I think he's such a fantastic actor. I love the guy in everything he's in. He's got this natural charisma to him, and he's like you always want to see more of him on screen. And I thought like they really just did nothing with his character. Like he shows up a few times to sort of show that he can fight with this sword of his,
mm-hmm.
and that's kind of it. Like that's literally all the purpose the guy serves. And then Gemma Atherton, her character was a waste as well in the sense that she's there to just like her entire purpose in this movie is to simply rescue the other characters when they get in trouble. Have you
Mm-hmm.
noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
It's like she's a nanny, which okay, let's back this up. She's a nanny. That's her profession, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet she's a better shot than everybody else. She knows all about poisons, all about like espionage. She's the one who actually runs the espionage ring.
Mm-hmm.
She's a master decoder when it matters. Like there's a plot line in the middle of the film where they have to decode this secret message,
mm-hmm.
and she's the one who does it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Jimon Hunsu is in trouble, she rescues him. When the Earl is in trouble later on, she rescues him. It's like, and yet we know nothing about the character. Did you notice that?
Oh yeah.
We know nothing of the character's backstory.
Yeah.
We know nothing of her motivations. Like, why is she working for this secret spy ring? Why is she working for this Earl? There's obviously they tried to make this romantic subplot between the two of them that literally goes nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, why does she have these feelings for this guy who's never reciprocated them even once?
Mm-hmm. Like, what's so special about her? Is it just because she looks similar to his dead wife? Like,
yeah, like they just never go into her story at all, and it was just like they're trying to sort of set these characters, these side characters, up as being important, but they're there to do is to like fill time with like, oh, this one can fight, and oh, this one can shoot, and oh, this one
yeah, there's the knife guy and the combat guy, and she's the gun person.
Yeah.
Like yeah, like when they first like show her that she's like they're doing some combat training and fighting and whatever, which is totally random. Like why he's learning all this, but okay. And then just randomly just
be a pacifist.
Yeah, exactly. And then she just off of a balcony, she trusts her shot that well to shoot a dagger out of this guy, a wooden dagger out of this guy out of his hand, and just. It's like how dangerous is that? Like, no matter how good of a shot you are.
Exactly. There's zero reason for it, even in the context of the scene. Like, it was like, honestly, if somebody did that in real life, you'd be like, what are you, like a complete psycho?
Mm-hmm.
And yet they show us like this sort of ha-ha funny moment, look how cool I am. And it's like, all right, I guess, but it served no purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I think somebody asked me what I would have done differently as a writer, than this thing. And it's like, I don't want to, I don't want to boast or anything to say like, oh, I could write this better. But at the same time, I feel like had they just started the movie with the assassination and being plunged into war and this kid being headstrong, going into battle, defying his father's orders, and he finds himself in the trenches where he's unprepared for the true horror of war, and Then you can have the scene like they have in the movie where the father pleads with the king to spare his kid and bring him back. The king does the same thing. We could have that exact same scene. The order goes out, but it's too late because the charge has been ordered. Everybody goes over the top, and the kid is killed. If they had that in the first 20 minutes of the movie, that is literally all you would have needed from that kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it would set up the idea that now this father is, he's
The main
lost
character.
both his wife, the main character, he's lost both his wife and his son thanks to wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there would be this opportunity to have a lot of resentment for the king because it's like, why didn't you bring my son home sooner, kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I pleaded with you, I've always been your loyal servant, but you betrayed me kind of in when I needed you the most. And then now imagine this scenario where it's the war is in full bloom, right? And then they find out there's a conspiracy to kill the king. And this is the conspiracy, not this incredibly obtuse, like long-winded thing where it's like world domination by starting wars and killing this guy and controlling that guy. It's like, just simplify it. Just simplify it to say there is a conspiracy to kill the king. And if the king dies in the middle of World War I, that could irrevocably ruin England's chances in the war, right? Because morale will drop instantly. They're without leadership. They're without that moral center that's guiding them through the war, all those things. And so it's like, then he has to literally swallow his pride and fight back that hate he has for this man, and instead do his duty and fight for the crown, because fighting for the crown means you're fighting for the country and you're going to fight for your nation. And that precedes everything, or supersedes everything, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got real motivation. And then imagine if that same guy then recruits other lords and people who have also lost sons, and maybe even one or two of the guys who've come back from the war. Maybe they're wounded, maybe they have like missing limbs or missing eyes, something like this, where it's like they've been deemed unfit to fight, but they are people who are still loyal and are still willing to do their duty. And this would be so much more in line with what the very first movie presented as the origin of the Kingsmen.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the other thing. I found that this movie, the origin of the Kingsmen, wasn't the same as what we were told was the origin of the Kingsmen. And had they done this, had they done it something more along these lines, I think the opportunity would have been there to also have a more balanced tone,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like, okay, if you want to do it more serious, here's your opportunity to be more serious. But you could also make it a little bit more on the lighthearted side, I think, in the types of characters that you bring into the mix, right? So
Yeah, they need more writers from Marvel, because they're really good at doing that, like serious but throwing in random jokes here and there to kind of lighten the mood, but then make it like
Yeah.
because compared to like this was trying to be like they were trying to get like Martin Scorsese to be impressed or Steven Spielberg to be impressed by, look at me, I'm doing a war movie, look how fancy I can be, not the actual where it has nothing to do with the connection. It's like, and what I also noticed is the only way they were kind of connecting it to the other movies was by having like manners maketh man, but that line, and Oxford's not bros or whatever the line is.
Yep.
Yeah, and like the one part when he's falling down the mountain, he puts a blade into his shoe to make the blade.
Right.
So no, sorry, I know that had nothing really to do with what you were talking about. I just wanted to because but it still continues on, because like it. So exactly. So going on to what you were saying then, though, is that would make it in a way almost similar, but then similar in a way to the first Captain America movie, that's what you're describing. Might almost make me think of scenes like the not the entire movie, but just the him rescuing the other the POWs and everything, and when he goes to rescue Bucky and everyone. That
Yeah.
scene. So, but either way, it would still be a better set because then exactly it would make it so that we know who the main character is, not figuring out between these two people which one is it, and it would
Hmm.
actually make sense as to why he's training and why he doesn't like the government because he even says like we need something that's above the government that has no politics involved, blah blah blah, and that would
Right.
actually help justify as to why he doesn't like the politics and the government, why he wants to build this separate.
Yeah, and speaking of which, there's a scene at the very end of the movie where we see them actually form the Kingsmen, and which I found it was also misfire in a big way in the sense in two ways. So one is that halfway through the movie they introduce Aaron Taylor Johnson as this random soldier who switches places with Conrad under Conrad's orders because Conrad is a officer and Aaron Taylor Johnson plays just a random private, and that's how Conrad gets himself into the trenches essentially
Mm-hmm.
when the king basically orders that he come home. And it was such a weird moment to watch because I saw it with a friend of mine, and we're sitting there watching, and I'm like, "Is that Aaron Taylor Johnson?" Because at first we couldn't tell. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the name, he was the lead character in the movie Kick-Ass. He was also Quicksilver in the
Thank you.
MCU movies.
Yes.
He was in Godzilla. He's a great actor. He's been in a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
and he's one of those people. It's like when you recognize his face, you're like, oh, I know this actor.
Mm-hmm.
And so it made me think immediately, like, oh, he's going to have a big role in this movie moving forward. Like maybe I had the feeling like he's going to take over for Conrad because they were really telegraphing that Conrad's going to get killed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I thought, okay, so this kid's going to take over for him. No, you literally don't see him again until the very end of the movie, where he's just randomly there at this table with the rest of these guys to start the Kingsmen. So that was the one thing that I found really weird. It almost makes me think like, is there like deleted scenes with Aaron Taylor Johnson on some cutting room floor because they ran out of time or something? I don't know. And secondly, they're going around the table. The Earl of Oxford says, "Okay, I'm Arthur." Aaron Taylor Johnson says he's Lancelot. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the names now. Jim On Hunsu says he's Merlin. Gemma Atherton says that she's Galahad. Um, then here's a really weird choice. The American ambassador to England, played by Stanley Tucci, again,
Yeah.
totally random cameo.
Exactly. Just randomly
this
there.
phenomenal actor that they just like threw in for 3 minutes of movie,
Mm-hmm.
and he's there at the very end of the movie, and he's gonna be, I think, Bedivere or Percival, I can't remember which one, and then the King of England himself, King George, and he's sitting there, and he's like, "Oh, and I'm Percival," and then they all sort of raise a hand, toast, and they're like, "We are the Kingsmen." I'm sitting there going like, "Wait a minute." The whole point is that you are the king's men. In other words, you are the guys who work directly for the crown, for the king. And yet the king is one of the guys who's like under the dude in charge
Mm-hmm.
who works for him. So it's like this circular weird logic of like, well, who's actually working for whom? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was just weird way to end the film. And yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It just I can keep going back to it. It's just they didn't know what they wanted to do for the movie.
Mhm.
Like they were making a World War One drama and just placing the Kingsmen stuff on top of it to get probably I don't know to get the budget or something to be like, hey, here's this like
Yeah.
here's this World War One drama that I've been writing and producing and blah blah. Oh, I can't get it sold. What if I market it as a Kingsman prequel? There we go. and they just like, yeah, uh,
And it's weird because I thought the first Kingsman movie I thought had a really great balance between serious and absurd, right? That
mhm,
that because it was there was like some a level of absurdity to what we were seeing, but it was done in a very purposeful way where it's like, okay, this is just we're having fun,
mhm,
right? But they managed a really nice balance with some serious moments. Like, for example, this idea of this poor kid who lost his father early and he has to watch his mother in an abusive relationship with a guy who's just a piece of crap, who's also abusing him at the same time. And but he has no real way of fighting back. He has no way of getting out of the situation, and we really sympathize with him, right? Because it's a serious situation, and yet yes, it was done in lighthearted way at times, but then there are moments where you're like I really feel for him, and I really
mhm.
feel for the situation that his poor mother is in as well, right? And then later on, there's a moment I don't know if you remember where the evil Samuel Jackson's
So,
plan comes to fruition, and the
mhm,
cell phones are making everybody crazy and murderous,
mhm,
and the mom is literally trying to get at the baby to kill her,
mhm.
and this poor little toddler who in the scene looks so genuinely terrified. I can only imagine what they did to that poor actress, like the little child,
Yeah.
because she's just a toddler. And her reaction is so heartbreakingly genuine.
Mhm.
I kept when the first time I saw that movie, I couldn't help but think like, what did they do to this poor kid on set
Yeah. To
to
make
get this reaction out of her? You know,
exactly.
but still, my point is, it was a very serious moment, and like, and it really sucks you in because you're like, oh my god, is this kid going to be okay,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, and then of course everything turns out fine, and because the hero wins, and good guys win, bad guys lose. Um, yeah, they just didn't find that balance in
Yeah.
this one.
Exactly. Like they literally, even at the end of the first Kingsman movie, there's two big things I want to talk about with the end. One being talking about when he's going by the some a princess of somewhere. I don't remember where she's from. She's a princess, and
Sweden, I think
yeah,
she was Sweden.
yeah. So she's
Yeah,
it's still in the cell, and then in the original version, she talks about like if you save the world, you can put it in my bum or something like that. And he walks by and he whatever. He goes like, oh,
right.
okay, sweet. And then he goes by, and then the way they kill everyone is by having fireworks of colorful explosions. It's just like it shows the comedic aspect of it, whereas for that's for us as the audience type thing, but whereas if it was in the actual situation, people's it'd be brains splattering everywhere, and it's
Yeah,
disgusting. But like they add it into a for the viewer to make it entertaining for the viewer. And then
mm-hmm.
so then they go back and mention like Merlin, can you get the door for me after like, and it adds that good comedy amount to it of being like, okay, well there you go. And like they still
Yeah,
had the serious moments of like when Eggsy's getting trained and it's the parachute scene and he's like, okay, here's my plan. This is what we're gonna do. Let's save everyone. And then he still like still made it work. And they still like the way how Merlin showed him was pull the ripcord. Like I wasn't
mm-hmm.
gonna actually let you die, you dumb shit. Like,
Right, right. Well, but they thought, remember, they thought at the beginning that the one cadet drowned
yeah,
right off the bat. And that was a very serious moment in the film because it's like you had all this levity and all the comedy and then the action and adventure of them getting out of the situation, and they all feel good about it and they're patting each other on the back and they're all joking. And then it's like Merlin shows them, yeah, but look at what happened because you guys didn't have each other's backs, right?
mm-hmm.
And it was this really serious moment in the film, and I thought like it was really well done, right? Even though later on it turns out that she's not actually dead,
Mm-hmm.
that it was just a test, but it still served the purpose because we as the audience didn't know that either. We're seeing the world through Eggsy's eyes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it was still a very serious moment, and yet it balanced so well with all the joking and the one-liners and things like this. It's almost like it really put me in mind in a lot of ways of the early James Bond films, which or even the Pierce Brosnan ones, where it was a lot more playful than let's say the Daniel Craig.
Okay.
version, right? Which became a very serious Bond.
Yeah.
But like the Sean Connery Bonds, I think even more so the Roger Moore ones, and then even more so the Pierce Brosnan ones. In between, you had Timothy Dalton, who was all even more serious than I would venture than Daniel Craig. But still, the point is, they had these. There was a playful quality to it, right? Because he's always throwing those little one-liners, right? Like keep the change or something when like he does away with the bad guy, and it was like I thought that the original Kingsman really had that playful quality to it. That it captured it really, really well, right?
Even with something as simple as Samuel L. Jackson's character being like being a hemophiliac, I think the word is, when you're afraid of blood. Like, and he literally, even when he like is right there, he's like pukes himself. Like, just that little. It showed that even human flaw. Like, he was still mastermind villain or whatever, but he was still just like had the weird little flaw, and he had a lisp, and it was just like they made even gave the character more more of a human quality to him.
Yeah, they turned the trope on its ear a little bit, right? And gave you something I think we haven't quite seen before. With especially with these little touches, I thought they were nice little touches to throw in. And this film played it much more straight, right? In that sense, nobody really had these little quirks. It's almost like they saved them all for the main bad guy, because he was the quirkiest character of them all, and yet it felt like his character demanded that he be the one that's taken the most seriously. And yet, it was hard for me to take this guy seriously at all, because it's like he's walking around wearing funny looking pants, and he's like cutting goats' heads off for no reason at all, and he's just like ranting and raving, and everybody's just like, oh yes, master, I'll do exactly what you want. And again, they showed no reason at all why all these powerful people were following this guy. There was absolutely no reason given. They all just blindly follow him. And it was like, okay, but why? What does he have over them? And they did that same trope that I've seen in countless movies that I cannot stand. This is one of my biggest pet peeves in movie villains. And I'm kind of glad we're talking about this film because it did this in the film. And this is the idea where the main villain kills an underling just to show everybody else that they should be afraid of him. And to me, that is always the stupidest scene in any film with a villain like this. Why? Because if, as the boss, you go around killing the people that work for you, then there will be zero loyalty from those people towards you. They will only be ever afraid of you. They will never follow you for any other reason than fear. And fear is not a motivator. Fear is like one of those things where it's like, I'll only do what you tell me for as long as I absolutely have to. Because the moment I get away from you, far enough away, I'm going to be like, screw you, buddy, I'm out of here, right? That's how fear works in real life. That's why you had people like, under Stalin's times, for example, in real life, the moment they crossed that wall, they were like, screw that, I'm not going back, right? Even though when they were under his rule, they were like the most loyal people ever, right? Because they had to be. But the moment they got away from that scenario, they're like, that's it, I'm out of here. Because that's what real life teaches us. That's not how you rule over people. And I understand, okay, it's a bad guy, I get it. But to me, I think Samuel L. Jackson's bad guy was, in that respect, so much better because he genuinely seemed to care about the people working under him, right? At least that was the feeling that I got. He showed how much he loved Mark Hamill's character, for example, or the girl that worked for him, Gazelle, right? How much he liked her and appreciated her. And you sort of get the sense like, oh, this is the guy who, even though his morals are askew and he's doing these evil things, you get the sense that he's trying to do in his way, he's trying to do right by the people that
Yeah,
work for him.
yeah, and well, it's again similar in like what makes a good villain. It's like someone that thinks that what they're doing is right or is better. Like so, Samuel L. Jackson's villain, he was trying to reduce population because to help save the world itself, so that everyone else can survive, type thing. So his motivation was it was makes sense. Then okay, cool. We have too many people on the planet. Here's a fast, easy way, and here's a way to do it because we know everyone is always connected to their phone. I don't know, when you look at it in a real logical way, obviously it's crazy, but when you look at it in the way of like the reason why he's doing it, compared to this nameless villain, just a Scottish guy, we barely even realize his name, this guy's name. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm being evil to be evil. I'm controlling these
Yeah,
like Putin and Lenin, and just because I can, quote unquote. Like how exactly?
yeah.
Like how is he? Like because these guys like are rulers of armies and everything, commanders. So how does this one guy have so much more power over these
Mm-hmm.
dictators?
Yeah, yeah. I just found it like silly, because it was so unbelievable. Like you say, I think motivationally wise, Samuel L. Jackson's character, you don't have to agree with his motives, but you understand them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they make them very clear. Like he thinks he's doing everything for the benefit of both mankind and the earth as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it's completely misguided, it's completely evil, and it's wrong, but you understand where he's coming from given his perspective. What was the Scottish guy's perspective?
Yeah,
Right?
to be a
Right?
bad
It's
guy
like,
just to be a bad guy. Yeah.
yeah, like I'm going to destroy and rule, wahaha, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, sure enough, they even gave him a mustache, and they should have had him twirling it because it's like if you're gonna go with the full evil trope, might as well have him twirl the damn mustache
Yeah.
on top of it.
And exactly, and they tried to do this whole big reveal. Like, granted, no, I had no clue, but the whole entire time I'm like, are we supposed to know who this bad guy actually is? Like when they finally did show his face, it was like, was it meant to be as if like this guy, even though they showed Lenin, but I'm just going to use Lenin as an example. Like, were we supposed to see like this guy is some historic figure throughout time? No, he's just some random
No,
guy that's close to that
well, no,
weaseled
he
his way
wasn't
in.
random. See, and this is the thing. This is why it's another misfire. He wasn't a random guy. Do you remember the British general, whose name I can't remember now, the one who dies on board the ship?
Yeah, no, I know they elaborate who he is, but I'm saying like
Yeah,
yeah, they elaborate who he is throughout the movie. But what I was saying is that it's how they kept him hidden. It seemed like
mm-hmm.
more like instead of just showing that he's there the whole time type thing.
Yeah.
It's how they were portraying him. It made it seem like
Oh, I see. I
they
see what
were
you're
the
saying.
reveal was going to be someone we already recognized throughout history type thing.
Right. Oh, I see what you mean. So it's like it would have been much more like maybe satisfying if it's like I don't know if it's just some historical figure
Mm-hmm.
that we all know. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that
exactly.
would have been
It
like
would have
oh my
been more
god.
of a surprise if it was actually Stalin, for example. I don't know.
Right. Right.
That was
Gotcha.
actually
Gotcha.
puppeting all this compared to just this
Yeah.
guy that we barely got introduced to. Like the only conversation we really noticed of this character was when he had a conversation with Conrad in the Kingsman room,
Mm-hmm.
waiting room,
Yeah.
and it's like okay,
Yeah.
like what, like why was this? Okay, like he was a side again, like just like we were talking about the other characters. They didn't elaborate on who this secretary, who this guy even is, even in that world of being
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Again, it spoke to that lack of motivation for anything anyone was doing. And that was to me that's always a hallmark of a poorly written movie, where you don't have a sense of why are the characters doing the things that they are doing, why are they making the choices that they are making.
mhm.
And if we don't understand that, if we can't get a sense of that why, we just sort of check out as the audience, because it's like, well, I don't understand it, and if I don't understand it, I'm not invested
Mm-hmm.
in it, right? And it's one of those things, I think, that writers have an obligation to to make it clear to their audiences. It can be a ridiculous reason, but give us the reason,
Mm-hmm.
right? And make us understand it. Again, we go back to that Samuel L. Jackson character. It's a ridiculous motive that he has, but we understand it,
Mm-hmm.
as ridiculous as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, I'll buy it. I'll buy into it. Now I'm along for the ride.
And then
Right?
it
I
makes
want
you,
to see what happens.
yeah, it makes you more emotionally invested in like, hey, like how is this
Yeah.
gonna resolve instead of like, and that's I think that's also the thing that failed with the second Kingsman movie too. The second one didn't have much of a like the villain, if I remember correctly, the second one, she was just trying to grow this drug corporate and try to big out this big drug new drug into the world or whatever, and help give the basically gives people like bath salts, like terrible dilemmas or whatever. And again, she
Yeah.
didn't have. I think if I remember correctly, I think her motivation was still better than this villain's character, but still
Uh,
definitely not as good as the
I,
first one.
as I recall, her motivation just really boiled down to money, didn't it? It was
Yeah,
just like,
something like
I
that,
just
just
want
to
to be.
run this organization of the Golden Circle. Like,
Yeah, and it's like it's one of those things where I find that trope only takes you so far, because it's like you're already super, 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 super rich. How much richer do you need to be? Do
mm-hmm,
you know what I mean? It's like it'd be like if I don't know, Bill Gates, uh, you know, that type of character. If they introduce a Bill Gates type character who's just like his only motivation is to just make even more money, and it's like, well, how many billions do you need,
mm-hmm,
right? And like, okay, I get it. I mean, I get the fact that there really are super rich people whose only motive is to make money. But I think for a fantasy film,
mm-hmm,
there needs to be more to it than just that. It's like, why?
yeah,
Why does this character feel the need to have so much money? Explain that to me.
mm-hmm,
That's a story I'm interested in. Just the surface level story of like, well, he's rich, but he wants to be richer. It's like, okay, but
mm-hmm.
why? Why does he want to be richer?
Like, what do you need this money for? Like, what does it do for
Right.
you? Yeah.
Right. What does it do for you? Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
considering
Like,
she already had an entire like island to herself with henchmen,
yeah.
robot technology, and so she already had engineers and everything working for
She's
her.
got everything.
And
Yeah, she's got everything. So
yeah,
like, what does she need more money for? It's like if they could elaborate on that, if they could give us that reason in the film, then it'd be like, okay, I can buy into this more now.
mm-hmm,
Now I can understand this villain's motivations too. And I think that's one thing that a lot of writers discount, right? They focus so much on the hero side of the story
mm-hmm,
and talking about the hero's journey, because that's where the term comes from,
mm-hmm.
hero's journey, right? So they really just focus on that, but they miss out the idea of like, well, but why is the villain doing what the villain's doing?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, like, we need that explanation as well. So if you're going to give us the hero's journey, for God's sakes, give us the villain's journey as well,
Mm-hmm.
because those are the films that really work the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. When the motivation is clear, it makes the most
Mm-hmm.
sense. Because like, yeah, as we were, the Kingsman 1 is top tier. Kingsman 2 is probably like a the 6, 7, 8 out of 10, depending on
Yeah, it's a solid B. I agree.
it's still
Yeah,
solid.
solid B.
Still,
Yeah.
and then this one is like there's still some things, but it's only like maybe like a 4 out of 10. Like,
Yeah,
like,
it had a few things that worked really well. I thought Rasputin was a good character.
mhm,
I liked him. I liked what they did with him. The scenes that they had with him, I thought were probably the most engaging. And I really wanted to see like, oh, where's this going?
mhm.
So I thought he was a great character. But in
And
the end, kind of a wasted character, right?
exactly, they especially using him in the trailer for everything. They yeah, that
Yeah,
wasted is a perfect word for that because yeah, he was used in the trailer and they in the trailer they try to make it look similar to the other Kingsman movies of which one thing
yeah,
also confused me is they didn't have any oneers, they didn't have any long one single takes or like the same action style like combat fighting through the other Kingsman movies. the closest thing was when Rasputin was doing his like dance fighting or whatever. Like they had
That's right.
a little
That's right.
bit, and there was a bit of a back and forth, but nothing even close to the other style
Yeah,
for the movies.
it was that was the best scene in the whole movie, I think. And had the movie had that feel to it, like you say, because the trailer sort of indicated like he's the bad guy, like he's the main villain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm watching this movie and I'm like thinking to myself, well, why isn't he the main villain? He's easily the most charismatic of all the villains that are portrayed in this film, and there's a lot of villains in this movie. That's
Mm-hmm.
the thing. Um, so it's like, why not just focus on one? You know, I think sequels, especially comic book style movies like this, they usually make this mistake of when they do subsequent films, they feel like more equals better.
Mm-hmm.
So then they start like loading in villains because it's like one villain's not enough. Now we need like, because it's the third movie, we need like 5 times as many villains.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you need that many villains? It's like one will do it, man.
Mm-hmm.
What if you do a really good villain? One main villain with a henchman. That's
Mm-hmm.
all you need.
Spider-Man
That's
3
all
is a
you ever
big
need.
example of that. Yeah. Or if it's or you, I'm gonna bring it to Spider-Man just because I like using that as an example. Spider-Man 3 is a
Sure.
perfect example because it's Peter Parker versus Sandman and Venom and Green Goblin and like so many characters. But now
Mhm.
when we look at Spider-Man Far From Home or No Way Home, it's about 5 or 6 villains, but there's still 3 heroes, so it balances out. And you're not doing 1 versus 5, making it, oh, how are they
That's
ever
right.
gonna beat this many people? It's like how are we going to team up and actually make this work compared to
Yeah.
so when they introduce too many things and then you fall by the wayside of, again, as we were just talking about, why are people doing it? If you have 1 or 2, then you can elaborate the story more and figure out what is the motivation behind people.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. Spider-Man. This last one. I mean, it's one of my favorite movies I've seen in a long time. I thought it was such a well done film, and they did that smart thing of saying, okay, we're gonna have multiple bad guys because it's a sequel, and so that's what's sort of expected. But they did it in a very clever way where they're like, okay, there's multiple heroes to counter the multiple villains,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now you've got it's a group versus a group rather than just like one on one or 1 on 5 or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
like you say. So yeah, that was definitely way better done.
Yeah. Exactly. So like, but yeah, I don't want to just jump right back into talking to Spider-Man because I do that all the time, but it's just an easy way of talking to use as an example because they're such big movies and so well known as an example of how to make it work.
But they're really well written, though.
Yeah.
They're really, really well written. I particularly like the Spider-Man series in the Marvel universe. I find the characters are all very human. You really understand where they're coming from. In the second one, no, the first one, sorry, the first one, um, with the Vulture being the bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
he was such an amazing villain
Mm-hmm.
because you really get to understand the motivations behind his actions and why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's like you might not agree with what he's doing, but you can understand why he's doing it.
Yeah, especially in the world that it's set in. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. Right. And the same goes for all the characters. Like I found that, of course, Peter, you understand his motives and the decisions that he makes and where they're grounded. But I found even the side characters, right? Like Ned, he's such a wonderful best friend character
Mm-hmm.
because you get a real sense of understanding this kid, where his mindset is, right? How he wants to be a hero himself, but of course he doesn't have superpowers. So he's the guy in the
guy in
chair,
the chair,
as he
yeah.
calls it,
Yeah.
right? And yet he's so happy to have that role,
Mm-hmm.
right? And be part of something bigger than himself. And it's like, and you feel happy for him,
Mm-hmm.
right? You feel, and it's like that's an awesome character development. It's like this is how you're supposed to write The supporting characters, guys.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
As a writer and someone who is a writer and you're a actor, director, you're someone that's actually fully involved in the industry.
yeah.
How much of this movie of the King's Man do you think got producers pushing in, like Suicide Squad, for example? Producers overrate James Gunn's writing. They fucking threw him
Oh
off the
gosh.
bridge. I have a feeling
Yeah.
that I that's the part of the issue there was the fact that producers were like, we need to push this way a little bit more, make it Oscar worthy. Like,
Yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know. I haven't heard any rumors one way or the other about that, so it's tough to say. Um, yeah,
do you
all I
think it
can
was
say,
more
all I
producer
can
or?
say is it's it's so unlike the previous two Kingsmen, and yet Matthew Vaughn directed all three of them, and he had a hand in writing this one. So I don't know. I don't. I maybe it was something on that on the studio level, but or maybe it was just a case that he was trying to do something different
Mhm.
because it's the third movie and it's a completely different setting and it's a completely different set of actors. So you maybe there's this expectation that even though it's the third film in the series, it really has very little to do with the very first two,
Mhm.
right? So you have to try different things to sort of rope in that audience, rather than just retelling the same story you did the first two times, but in a World War I setting,
Mhm.
which is what he could have done.
Mhm.
And I think lesser directors would have done exactly that.
Mhm.
um, they would have just copied Eggsy's story, right? Where they would have taken Conrad as this poor kid from the streets of London, but in 1914,
Mhm.
and done the same sort of idea.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm glad they didn't do that. So I appreciate that he tried something different. Um, I just feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities.
Mhm.
Is all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I think no, no, yeah, that's definitely a good point because if it was just the exact same thing, then it would have been like, okay, we still would have been talking about it, but and still probably would
Mm-hmm.
have been talking about it in a negative way. But we would have been talking about like, okay, well, can you do something a little bit different? So that's what's must it's going to be so hard for any writer, director, producers. Like, where do you find that balance to do? Because either way, people are gonna, no matter what, you're gonna have people. You can't please everyone, right? So I
Yeah.
think it was still a decent movie as a movie. Take away the Kingsman-ness of it. I think it would have made more sense as just a general World War I like drama or whatever, right? And then just maybe and then and as a movie in general, it was okay. It was longer than it should have been, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They
True.
drew out
Yep.
way too much stuff, and you could tell it looks like they were shot pieces, and they were like, "Does this make sense? Okay, we'll put it in anyway, and hopefully it makes sense." Like, there's some things that they had the money to do it, they had the time to do it, so they might as well do it, type thing. Where
Mm-hmm.
was it necessary for the film? Maybe not, but yeah, I think
You
yeah,
know what? I
yeah.
think I think it's one of those things where at this budget level, there are certain expectations on all parties, and I think it's very easy probably to get caught up in that sense of this is a big machine and let's do as little as we can to disrupt the machine. So with that, you get this sense, I think, sometimes that there's not enough pushback at any level. Um, whether that's at the writer level or at the director level or the producer level or the actor level, whatever, I don't know. I can't speak to that, but it's almost a sense of I can't imagine that everybody who read that script would have been like, oh, this is the best script I've ever read. I just can't imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
Because my feeling reading, if the script was anything like what came on screen, my feeling reading it would have been like, what the heck am I reading?
Mm-hmm.
right? And I would have had the same questions I'm having now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is this character doing this? And what's going on here? And what's happening here? And why is this going on? And if you have that many questions reading a script, those are all red flags. But again, it's this thing where it's like it becomes this big machine where it's like, but there's hundreds of millions of dollars being pumped into this. And it's like, and we're starting on Friday. And you know what I mean? And it's like, who are you to question things now, man?
Yeah,
Like
it's yeah, exactly.
we're going ahead with this. And then, movies being what they are, like you say, there's sometimes people on the upper end of things, especially the money people or whoever, who are saying, "Hey, I'd like to see this,"
Yeah.
and "Hey, I'd like to see this," or our test audience or our survey says people want to see more of blank.
Mm-hmm.
So let's throw that into this film. And you're like, yeah, but that has no basis in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. Audiences want to see it. So throw it, shoehorn that in there. It's like, again, makes me think of Spider-Man 3 with Venom, right?
Yeah, Sam Raimi did not want Venom at all. Raimi,
right? Yeah, that's right. It wasn't even part of the script, and the studio made him put Venom in because Venom was a very popular character with comic book readers,
mm-hmm.
right? So I get it when there's that sort of, level of pressure, as it were, I think. And I think maybe sometimes people are afraid to voice concerns or to say, hey, you know what? This isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do something about this? Can we think about it? Can we change it? Yeah, I don't know. Does it maybe happen more? I think maybe it happens more in bigger films than on smaller ones because there's more to lose,
mm-hmm.
right? There's more at stake.
Yeah.
And I think in smaller films, because there's less pressure, everybody involved sort of feels like, well, I can speak up and there won't be like severe repercussions.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on a big film, it's like, I almost imagine, I've never been on a big movie. So I don't know, but I imagine there are probably times when it's the safer route at any level for you to just say, "Yep."
Yeah. Let's
right?
get this exactly. Make them happy so that we can just get this done and made, and hopefully everyone is happy at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you just sort of hope for the best, right? Yeah. I don't know. To me, I think a wise filmmaker surrounds themselves with at least some trusted people who are willing to give them a little pushback, who are willing to say, no, this doesn't work,
mm-hmm.
this needs work, this needs to be changed.
Like you and David.
Right, yeah.
You
like,
and David
like
Heacocker. Yeah, you guys, what I noticed with you two, you guys definitely were like, wait, what makes sense here? Oh, yeah, like, okay, that's why, yeah.
Yeah, we approached our partnership on the co-directing side from day one like that. We said, listen, if we're going to make this work, we have to be 100% honest with each other. That means it's like if something's not working, let's voice it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it right then and there, right? And I find that that's such a better dynamic because it's like if anybody does, and that was something, I don't know if you remembered, we sort of encouraged that on set. It's like, look, if somebody sees something's off, something's wrong, say so,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, there's always that thing of like, is there something in the shot that shouldn't be in the shot, right? That's the most basic level of that.
Yeah.
It's like, point it out, man. Point it out. Because, like, if I'm focusing on performance and Dave's focusing on focus and shot composition, we might miss the bottle of water that shouldn't be in the shot.
Yeah.
Right? And if somebody says so, it's like, I'm only going to be grateful.
Yeah,
right?
fix it now.
Chastise them.
Yeah, exactly. Fix it now so you don't have to do some major like editing just to take it out later. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So,
okay.
But I find that should be the case at all levels.
Yeah. So normally I ask you what's something like 5 good things, 5 bad things, but we've mostly been talking about the negatives. What can you give me a few? It doesn't even have to be a specific number, just a few couple things off the top of your head that you did actually like, something that was positive you did like about the movie
Um, I thought there were a couple of amazing stunt sequences in the film. And I know on the surface that doesn't seem like a big deal, but I'm a big fan of action. So for me, I really appreciate great stunt work when I see it. The Rasputin fight, being chief among them, I thought that fight was so well done. Especially the way they choreographed this is like a three-way fight between the characters, and the fact that Rasputin had this dance fighting style, which I thought was really cleverly done, where they incorporate this sort of Russian traditional dance into his fighting style, and the idea that it's all done in the backdrop of the 1812 overture. I really love that because that's one of my favorite pieces of music of all
though.
time. So I thought that was really cool bit of filmmaking. There's a scene later on where Ralph Fiennes is flying on a plane and he gets stuck in the wing of the plane
Yeah.
as the plane is falling down. That scene was fantastic. I love that scene because I genuinely felt, um, like that feeling of, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to him? Even though he's going to be fine, he's the hero. But they did it in such a good way. Like it was so well done that it's like, how's he going to get out of this? This is really cool. It was exciting. It was thrilling. I didn't know how it would end. So I appreciated that scene very much.
Yeah. That's one of those things that when watching it as people like you and me who like seeing how movies are made compared to general people who just watch a movie to watch a movie. For me, when I was watching, I was like, holy shit, that's many. Looks how many shot lists are on just this scene alone, and keeping track of like where the plane is in space compared to when he's upside down, where the actor is, like who the stunt double is, and actually editing it, and like, okay, so in this scene he was upside down and the plane was this far down, and you saw the mountains in the background at this, like that. What I was watching, I was like, let alone like what I agree with you of being like, holy shit, okay, this is actually like, again, like knowing he's gonna get out, but like an actual like wow moment. Then also being like overthinking of like, holy fuck, like there's so much shit going on here.
Well, and I find that something Matthew Vaughn does really, really well is those action scenes, right? Like that was one of the things I love about the first two Kingsman movies because their action scenes are really spectacular. Because he's got this really cool style to his action scenes. It's almost it's a totally different style, say from somebody like Zack Snyder. But what it makes me think of is he's kind of made his own style. That you can almost recognize a Matthew Vaughn sort of action scene just from the way that it plays out.
Kind of
Same
like
as you can usually recognize a Zack Snyder action scene just from the way it plays out. So they've kind of made these sort of signature styles. And I thought those were the times of the film where I felt his signature style really come out. Well, I think, like I said before, I thought the level of acting was really good. I thought the actors, the performances I thought were solid for the most part, other than the main villain, who was just too cartoonish. But the heroes, for example, Ralph Fiennes, I thought he tried. That's what I'm going to say. He tried. The man is a phenomenal actor. He's an Oscar level actor, so he can act. I felt there were moments where it's like certain moments took too long, but then other moments were too short. Like when he's the aftermath of his son's death. There's this like, I don't know, 2-minute segment where he's like sort of falling apart and he's in tears and he doesn't want to have anything to do with the world. But the moment goes by so quickly until he sort of like, picks himself up off the ground and it's like, okay, I'm going to stop the bad guy. And it's like, it just happened so quickly. And I was like, wow.
That's the time that you should have let him sit in the moment. Yeah.
Exactly. Like this was, and it was such a bit of acting on his part. I thought like, wow, he's like, I'm getting some genuine emotion here. And then it's like, before you know it, it's like, it's just gone. And it was like, oh, okay, I guess we're moving on now, So, Yeah, so and the Rasputin, I'm not sure who the actor is who played him,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought he did a fantastic job. I
Mm-hmm.
really liked
Yeah,
his
like
performance.
the thing was just something so simple, like just smelling of that the pie and just having it in his there and just shoving it in his face and just like he
Yeah.
because as like he knows there's something up and you can tell and you know there's something there and he's just the craziness of like him licking his guy's leg there and just
Yeah.
like the weird intense stare and yeah like the actor who played Rasputin worked really well
Hmm.
and like the how he's just like yeah if you knew me if you did actually sure know me then you know I take poison every I drink poison every morning to keep myself immune from it like
Yep.
those small little subtleties in which is I do believe an actual historic fact
Hmm.
that he actually did stuff like that and like the weird craziness and which again which would have made more sense for him to be the actual main villain like
Yeah, like the way that they, you know, dispatched him in the film was reminiscent of the way it really happened in real life. And this idea, because in real life, I don't know how much of the Rasputin story you know, but in real life, what happened was there was a group of princes in Russia who really did want to kill him, and so they invited him to officially it was a Christmas party, but it was really an orgy that they invited him to,
mm-hmm,
where the idea was let's get him as drunk as we can, and then we'll kill him. And they poisoned the wine, and he drank enough poison to kill like 10 men, and he was still like totally fine.
mm-hmm.
And so they thought like, okay, this doesn't work. So they got desperate and they shot him and they stabbed him, and then they threw him into the river, which it was winter time, so it was frozen over. So they had to like basically cut a hole in the ice, toss him into the river, and I want to say they beheaded him as well afterwards. And what happened was when they eventually fished his body out, they found that he had water in his lungs, which meant that he was actually breathing when he was dumped into the river. So imagine this, like poison didn't work, shooting didn't work, stabbing didn't work. He basically drowned to death after all that. Like the guy was, you know, there was like this sort of mythical quality to him, like he's some kind of a Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And his death only kind of spoke to that. And I thought it was kind of cool how they recreated that,
Yes.
but in the context of this
Yeah, still throwing him into the river,
scenario.
and yeah, and still trying to get him to
Yeah,
freeze. And Russians don't freeze. Russians are born in the
yeah,
ice.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And it was so I thought that was clever. I thought that was well done. You know, but again, it just made me think like, man, this is the guy who should be the main villain.
yeah, exactly. When I was like, when it showed up, it's like, okay, there we go, boss fight, or no, not the actual boss. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, exactly.
but
Yeah, and I found the actual boss fight wasn't like it wasn't as exciting as the Rasputin fight. The
mm-hmm,
Rasputin fight felt like it actually had higher stakes, and I think the reason for that is because again, there's three guys fighting him, and you don't know which of them are safe,
mm-hmm,
right? Whereas when it was the final fight, it's just main good guy against main bad guy. And this being a comic book movie, you know the hero will win.
mm-hmm.
So there's zero stakes in the final fight. Whereas in the Rasputin fight, there actually felt like there was stakes.
Yeah. Do you know what it reminded me of? The final bad guy boss fight at the end reminded me of the Fast and Furious. I think I want to say it's 6 or 7, or it's something like that, where it's Vin Diesel versus uh,
Jason Statham.
Jason Statham, and it's just like ball,
Yeah,
like, and it's a brawl for no reason. Then you get Jason, then
yeah.
you get
That was
the
six.
yeah
That was
sick.
six.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, exactly. And like that's what it made me think of. It's just like random, like okay, we're kind of connected, but not really. Like we kind of know each
Mm-hmm.
other, but not really. And it's like,
Yeah.
and fall over dead. Like, yeah.
I honestly thought that fight was better.
Yeah, there's no like there
I'll
was
be honest.
hardly any choreography or anything.
Yeah.
They blew
So
their budget on trenches and
Yeah.
Germans. Yeah. Well, and then again, they did this whole thing of like rescuing the speaking of the trench too, of like of rescuing the one Brit that was had the secret message or whatever in the middle, and they did this whole thing of like, hey, we're gonna go quiet and everything, and then just
Mhm.
they had the issue of like Game of Thrones where they filmed the whole thing at nighttime, and it's too hard to follow like who was the actual leader in command, who was the main character, the character we're supposed to be following, the like who was who, except for a couple times when you see the Germans with their gas masks, face shields on for
Yeah.
some reason.
And it was, now
Like,
that
why
you
were they
mention
wearing them?
that, did you find it kind of like, I don't know, ironic, I guess is the word, that it all ended up being pointless? Because I don't know if you know, if you caught it in the movie. So they go through this entire sequence of this mission to rescue this guy, and then it turns out he's carrying the secret code. Um, and it was like, but it turned out that they'd already decoded the message. So, it was like the kid almost died for nothing. I mean, I guess there was the angle that because it was the original handwritten note, that's what got them into the war.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get that, but there was this other side of it, was like he was only ferrying the message because he thought they needed to get the message, but they'd already got the message. They already
Mm-hmm.
figured it out.
Yeah.
So it's like, to me, it just felt like, well, so what was the point of all that?
Yeah.
Like,
They again, it was trying to be like Hacksaw Ridge, where just one guy saves
yeah,
everyone. They like if they did it something like that, but made it similar to like the first Wonder Woman movie, where it was like extravagant and or random explosions or whatever,
yeah,
it
that
would
was
have.
really well done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if that movie, like that's why the Wonder Woman movie is one of my favorite movies in the DCEU,
Mhm.
because it's similar to like the Marvel style.
Right.
But if they did that scene in like the Wonder Woman style, it would have it would have made sense if they actually filmed the movie in like the original Kingsway style, right? Where this is just again 1917 Hawksaw Ridge, whatever, name Dunkirk, name a World War One movie, and they're trying to
Well,
emulate that.
you know what? You make a really good point. You make a really, really good point. Imagine if they'd done that sort of trench warfare scene where where Conrad is taking on the Germans in the same style that Eggsy took on the bad guys in Samuel L. Jackson's Lair.
Yeah, and like
Had they
they
done
actually showed
that,
some of
or
his training, and actually
yeah,
like he's been.
or how Colin Firth took on all those extremists in that church,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, had they done that,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been super cool,
Yeah, it would have blown it
right?
exactly, but it wouldn't have made sense they wouldn't have made sense to do it in that because of how the style of the movie has been played
Right,
throughout the entire
right,
time.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
so
So,
yeah, I think I think in general the movie was okay, but it just didn't have the same style to it. It just
mhm,
yeah.
that's right.
So okay, I think that's pretty much covers it. We are both feeling okay with the movie, but wishing it went a different way, and but just not too exact. Um, yeah, you can definitely if you like this kind of things, like make sure to keep on listening, please. I need some love and support, but um, yeah, always a pleasure talking with you, Neil. It's always fun. I when
Yeah,
I
I love
was
it.
first thinking, I because I had a small headache, I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna have much to talk about this because it was a long movie. I was kind of falling asleep watching. I was like, but no, I'm glad that we were able to jump in and actually have a full conversation about it again. So it's always fun.
Okay, let me put a bug in your ear and a bug in everybody else's ear who might be listening right now. I saw a far superior movie just the other night. It's called Cop Shop. It was actually written by a writer from here in Alberta, um, and it stars Gerard Butler, Frank Grillo. It was awesome. It was such a fun movie. It's contained. It's like kind of like Assault on Precinct 13. Think of it that way, um, but in a much more playful style. And the lead character, I can't remember her name. She's a brand new actress. I haven't seen her in anything else. She was just fantastic. I'm like an instant fan of hers. And she's like probably one of my new female top heroes in action movies.
Mm.
So like, check this movie out. Maybe we can talk about that one
Okay.
at some point in the future.
Okay,
I'd love
sounds
to hear
good.
what you think of that one.
Oh well, no, sounds good. Hey, I always ask you for recommendations as well. So,
There we go.
yeah, there we go. All right. So for anyone who's listening, thank you for listening and having fun. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and listen to anywhere on Spotify, Apple, Google, anywhere podcasts are available. If you are also interested, follow myself on TikTok, M3_media, and Neil on TikTok as well, because he makes all the stuff that he was bringing up about writing and giving it, like having your characters and everything. He has really quick snippets and info on that on TikTok. He's only started TikTok pretty recently, but I'll still give him a little bit of a plug. Neil Chase Film on TikTok, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
just like anywhere else. But yeah, no, he's actually quite knowledgeable, and I've even though I always tell myself, no, I'm not a writer, but like you always try to get motivation to give you to actually do it. You're definitely one of the people that try to get like, not the fact that you're getting me to do it, but like makes me think, oh, fine, I guess I could.
You can. Anybody can. Everybody's got a story inside them to tell, and they should. And you should too.
I'll try.
All right.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening, and we will hear from you. Well, see. Wow, did I mess that sentence up? We will be back again in the future.